I started my professional life in financial services as a financial consultant, which was a fancy way of saying that I sold financial products for a financial company. I did really well at that as a young man. But what was even more exciting was the emphasis that the company placed on personal development. And so the company insisted that even though we were self employed and that you know, we had to make what we could of the opportunity, they insisted that we read inspirational, motivational, and educational books. So as a teenager, I was reading Jim Rohn, I was reading Zig Ziglar, I was reading the success classics, Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, and The Power of Positive Thinking, Norman Vincent Peale. And then beyond the success classics, we were compelled to attend seminars and listen to gurus and masters teach us about sales and marketing and about generating leads and about even just the art of winning friends and influencing people, creating rapid rapport, winning people over, the power of persuasion, making presentations. I was being introduced to all of that as a teenager. And so when I went into the ministry, I kind of brought all those skill sets with me. And I applied them to ministry. And so at a very early age, I was pastoring one of London's fastest growing churches. And I was just using a lot of the principles that I had gleaned from some of these masters. I think what I noted more than anything else is that they were all, classic success philosophy was effectively a fusion of theology and psychology to produce a philosophy of success. People like Robert Allen had written a book, As a Man Thinketh. And of course, it was a book on psychology, but it was based on theology. And the end result was a philosophy of success. And then as time went on, I noted that a lot of the theology was being taken out of the philosophy of success. And so what we had was a godless success philosophy. And that never sat very well with me, and decided that what we might go ahead and do is just reclaim the space because it's our space. And I think the Bible tells the story of a people who started with every conceivable social and economic disadvantage. Slavery, right? You see the house of Jacob, the house of Israel are enslaved in Egypt. And yet from that position, God begins speaking into their consciousness about a land flowing with milk and honey, about becoming the head and not the tail, about being above only and not beneath, about houses you didn't build and vineyards you didn't plant and wells that you didn't dig. And God saying, I'm going to give it all to you, but you have to survive the journey. And in order to survive the journey, you're going to have to move to new levels of faith, because the faith it takes to get out of Egypt is not going to keep you through the wilderness. And the faith that keeps you through the wilderness is not going to get you into the promised land. So you have to keep on building your faith to new levels. And according to your faith, you're going to be able to transition from slavery to mastery, from being a tenant in Egypt to being a landlord in Canaan. And of course, the Jewish people, or the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, certainly under King David and Solomon, became the envy of the nations. I mean, all of the kings of all of the Gentile kingdoms paid an annual subscription to King Solomon simply to sit and hear his wisdom. And I think that is the biblical basis for the coaching industry, that fundamentally there is a wisdom that makes you wealthy. There is a wisdom that overcomes adversity and obstacles, and it's worth paying for, because ultimately, value that is not valued is not valuable. Ooh, I'll say it again. A value that's not valued is not valuable. That simply means that when you pay for something, you make an internal subconscious contract with yourself to follow through on the information that you've received. And outside of that internal contract, it's optional as to what you're going to do with it. If you pay for it, actually, you've decided you're going to listen carefully, you're going to take the notes, and you're going to follow through. And so this was Solomon's idea. He said, look, I'll show you how I became the richest man in the world, but you're going to pay an annual subscription for that. And that's perhaps the basis of the coaching industry. So I think that the story of people coming from slavery to mastery, that's ours. We own that. That's our ancestors. That's our spiritual heritage. And I am not content for a philosophy of success to be godless. I think our philosophy of success should be full of God and full of biblical principles and kingdom concepts, and this is ours. And I guess we're at the dawn of a revolution in which traditional Christianity and historic Christianity is colliding with the kingdom, the culture of the kingdom, and we're having to make a decision about whether the whole thing is about getting out of here and going to heaven, or whether it's about thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So I guess, I inherited a theology that said, look, this world is not my home. I'm a stranger here. I'm a pilgrim. I'm just a passing through. And so the idea was you live as detached as you possibly can from the world because, you're going to get out of here. But I don't really see Jesus promoting an evacuation mentality. All right? I don't see him promoting an imminent evacuation. Instead, he taught us to pray that the kingdom would come. So this is not about me going to heaven as much as it is bringing heaven to earth. And like I said this morning, God is standing by his original intention, which means that he is going to get what he wanted in the beginning. And what he wanted was heaven on earth. And therefore, he's going to get just that. And best thing we could do when we discover the purpose of God is align our plans with his purpose, because I have found that it is much easier to do what God is blessing than to ask God to bless what you're doing. All right? It's much easier to ask to do what God is blessing than to spend weeks, months, years asking God to bless what you're doing. If you'll do what he's blessing, then what you're doing is already blessed. And so God is standing by his purpose. I've decided to align all of my plans with his purpose, and subsequently the power of heaven is available to me. The power of heaven is backing me, because God is it's not that he's backing me, he's backing his purpose. And all we've done is aligned our plans to his purpose. You're a wonderful audience already. Are we having fun? Okay, so, I never preach a long sermon, by the way. It's my introduction that takes all the time. But I'm going to make to you the same promise and pledge that King Henry VIII made to his many wives when he said, I will not keep you too long. Huh? Okay? But I can also assure you that my preaching and my teaching is never as long as it seems. Okay, I'm just checking your humor quotient, because you're going to need a humor quotient to work with me, all right? Because half of what I say is jokes, even though there's some good truth embedded in the jokes. All right, so I'm going to go very deep tonight, and I'm hoping that we've got our thinking caps on and that we're ready to think on a very profound level, because I'm going to share some things that are quite profound, and they may not come as revelation. They may simply come as a confirmation, because I actually don't think that God is ever saying anything to you that he hasn't already said within you. And what happens is you resonate with things that you hear. They make sense to you because at a profound spiritual level, you've already heard them. Does that make sense? It's kind of why we like people straight away, and we resonate, we connect with people straight away. Do I have a biblically studious audience in front of me tonight? Do I? So I guess I can tell you a little story out of the Kings, how that Elijah basically called for a famine over the kingdom of Ahab and Jezebel. Perhaps the darkest period in Israel's history was the result of a marriage between King Ahab and a Sidonian princess called Jezebel. And as the result of that covenant, it opened the door for a lot of demonic activity, darkness, idolatry to prevail in Israel. The prophets of God were outlawed. They were being hunted down. They were being murdered. It was a very dark period. And Elijah called for a famine over the land, and he said, there will be no rain except I say so. All right, y'all remember that story? Okay, but careful what you wish for, okay? Because if there's no rain, then the prophet has to find something to eat. And so God said to him, okay, look, go down to the brook Kerith. There's water in the brook, right? And I've commanded the ravens to feed you there. Now, I love that because God didn't say, I've commanded the ravens to feed you. He said, I've commanded the ravens to feed you there. In other words, I have sent the ravens to an address. I'm now sending you to that address. And if you are in the right place at the right time, you're going to be sustained. He then says to Elijah, go to Zarephath, because I've commanded a widow to sustain you. Interesting. Elijah gets there, meets a widow, baking a cake for herself and her son. And if God had said to me, okay, I've commanded this person to feed you, I would at least expect that the person was expecting or anticipating my arrival. But when Elijah showed up, the widow didn't know nothing about it. Okay? God has said, I've commanded the widow to feed you, but he shows up and the widow knows nothing about it. But when Elijah says to her, okay, look, bake me a cake first, she complied because something in his voice resonated with something that was already inside of her. Because the commandment of God was not made to her conscious mind, but it was made to her spiritual essence. And because she had received it spiritually, she recognized, she resonated with an opportunity to be of service. And so I think that we're going to go very deep tonight. And are you happy to go deep? Yes. Okay. You sure you don't mind? Careful what you wish for. We are going deep. Because I'm going to start tonight, and I hopefully will take it to another level tomorrow night. But I'm going to start tonight on something that I call spiritual intelligence for entrepreneurs. Spiritual intelligence for entrepreneurs. So I might as well test the pen now and see how we go. Okay? So this is spiritual intelligence for entrepreneurs. Now, if you cannot read my writing, join the club. Okay? We already have something in common. All right? But we're going to get spiritual intelligence for entrepreneurs. There are 3 intelligences that are known to give you an advantage in business. All right? And it's accepted in virtually all schools of business, theory, and philosophy. There are 3 that give you an advantage, okay? Now, let me define them before you define them as I write them, okay? So the first is academic. Okay, so so the idea is not that you have academic qualifications, but you have the ability to grasp quickly a new idea or to comprehend something that is complex or complicated. If you can quickly grasp a new idea or comprehend something that is complicated, this will give you an advantage in business, specifically because the terrain is changing all the time because new tools make old models obsolete. All right? So what we call a disruptive innovation is one that basically makes obsolete the old model. And of course, you're all familiar with Uber, right? Uber was considered a disruptive business model because it made obsolete, it's certainly in our country, the minicab and the taxi industry because people were able to order a car to wherever they were. They didn't have to stand on the street waiting and hoping. They could order the car to wherever they were. And this meant that the taxis suffered, the minicab offices suffered. What about Amazon? Amazon has perhaps been one of the most disruptive business models, okay? Because we're able... Now, what has made Amazon, Airbnb, or Uber effective is disruptive technology, right? So the digital revolution, the app, it has basically changed the business landscape. But it has only changed it for people who possess a degree of academic intelligence in that they can quickly grasp a new idea and they can comprehend something that is complicated. So, of course, there's some people who are still way back in the past simply because they won't even find the courage to try to use apps. That makes sense? Okay. So academic intelligence is known to give you an advantage in business. The second one is emotional intelligence. So this gives you an advantage in business because success, is a jagged line. It's not a straight line, okay? You are sometimes going to take 2 steps forward and 1 step back, all right? Any person that's honest about their success journey will say that they've had their share of disappointments, frustrations, letdowns, setbacks. They've had people sabotage, reject, oppose. They've had to deal with criticism. They've had to deal with allegation. They've had to deal with issues that would typically talk the average person out of continuing in business, right? So people quit sometimes because they're not emotionally intelligent enough to get back up and to keep going. I think it's Winston Churchill who said that success comes to the people who are able to fail over and over again without losing their enthusiasm. All right? And that ability is an intelligence. It's an emotional intelligence where you are aware of how you're feeling. You are aware of the state or the mood that you are in, and you're able to think about your thoughts as an objective observer. And you're able to say, actually, that mood is not good. It's not productive. It's not empowering. It's not helpful. And you're able to further say to yourself, actually, you need to change that state before you get on that stage. And then, of course, there are other skills that come out of that in terms of your ability to coach others emotionally and to get them in the right mood and frame of mind. So academic intelligence will give you an advantage. Emotional intelligence will give you an advantage. How many of you agree with that, by the way? Yeah? Okay. So here's the third one, and it's called relational or social intelligence. So these are the people, according to Dale Carnegie, who can win friends and influence people. No one will go along with you if they cannot get along with you. All right? So this is about developing an attractive and magnetic personality so that your personal brand is magnetic and you're the kind of person that people want to know. And there are some skills that go with that emanate from that intelligence, such as creating rapid rapport. There are certain people who create rapport with you very, very quickly. Isn't that right? Now, when I say certain people, I think there's a living model in this room of what I call relational intelligence. And he's sitting over yonder, okay? It's impossible to not like this person. Isn't that right? Now I'm speaking of the one Myron Golden. It's impossible to not like him. He's magnetic, he's charismatic, he has charm, and he knows how to very quickly lower your defenses, let you know that you're safe, Isn't that right? But a lot of this is skill that you develop sometimes unconsciously over a period of time. But what is clear is that if you are relationally intelligent, that will give you an advantage in business, because ultimately all business is about people. Isn't that right? You're not in business if you're not, people say, I'm not a people person. Well, you're definitely not an entrepreneur either. Okay? Because that's what we do. We service people. We identify their needs, their problems, their aspirations, their issues, and we service them. And so relational intelligence is very, very important. However, there is a root intelligence, okay? A root intelligence. What I sometimes think of as the forgotten intelligence, and it's not that it's been forgotten, it has been omitted, all right? There's a difference between being uneducated and being miseducated, all right? If you're uneducated, you're ignorant of a truth or a fact or a body of information, but if you are miseducated, you've been deliberately misled, and truths have been hidden from you or obscured, or you have been forced to focus on something in an attempt to hide something else. And so perhaps my best-selling book of all time is a book called The Miseducation of the Masses, right? Foreword by Les Brown. And, I was inspired to write that book after reading The Miseducation of the Negro by Carter G. Woodson, who made an observation about how emancipated Negroes were educated after the Civil War. And he noted that they were taught lots of interesting things, but they were not taught anything that would empower them to become owners, to become independent, to become wealthy, and that these subjects were somehow missing from the curriculum. I looked at our modern education system. I looked at its roots, like how compulsory state education came into being, and I found out that actually it was initially an instrument for social control. It was a weapon of mass instruction. It was initially modeled in what was Prussia by King Wilhelm Frederick, who had suffered huge losses in the Napoleonic Wars so that his army was depleted. And he thought, well, how am I going to control my population with a depleted army? He said, here's what we do. We take all the children and make them compulsory attend our schools. And we'll teach them unwavering loyalty and obedience to the king. Okay? Which was the objective in education, was obedience. Think about it. You were not rewarded or punished for your intelligence. You were rewarded or punished for your obedience. And then in the Industrial Revolution, the model was incorporated into the United Kingdom and into the U.S., and the objective was to generate voluntary slaves. Oh, help me now. Which is why the school mirrored the factory floor. The bell was already in the factory. All right? And so the idea was that the school would be a factory that would mass produce workers who would work for a basic living. The idea was the mass production of workers. It was not the empowerment of children or of a generation. It was the mass production of a workforce. So the point and the prize in education was that you got a good job. And you were told that if you don't do well here, you won't get a good job. And therefore you won't survive. The implication was you cannot survive without a job. Right? And think about it. I didn't think I was going to go here tonight, but think about it. What profession in life, anywhere, requires you to have the ability to concentrate on maths for 30 minutes? then forget it and concentrate on English for 30 minutes. Then forget it and concentrate on geography for 30 minutes. Then forget it and concentrate on physics for 30 minutes. Then forget it and concentrate on a foreign language for 30 minutes. That is called brainwashing. Because there is no profession that will require that ability. Yeah, I'm in trouble. But I tend to be quite comfortable in that space. So the secular sciences don't even acknowledge the root intelligence. And the reason they don't acknowledge the root intelligence is they don't believe in the trichotomy of a human being. That a human being is three parts: spirit, soul, and body. They think about the body and the soul. But I'm going to take you on a journey and explain the difference between spirit, soul, and body. Because a lot of what we are doing is emanating from the soulish realm and omitting where your true intelligence lies. The three-part man. Genesis 2, verse 7. So here's what it reads. And the Lord God formed man from the dust of the ground. Let's all say his body. And breathed into his nostrils the breath, Hebrew ruach, spirit of life. Everyone say spirit. And man became a living soul. Say soul. We have here in one verse the body, the spirit, and the soul. And the soul comes into being as the result of the spirit, which is the breath of God, entering the physical form that is Adam. And if you separate the spirit from the body, what does the Bible say? The body without the spirit is dead. But when the spirit is united with the body, then the body, the person, becomes a living soul, which is best understood as mind, a living mind. A living mind is the result of a union between the spirit and the body. Genesis 2, verse 7. Psalm 146, verse 4. Psalm 146, verse 4 says, his breath goeth forth. In other words, his breath leaves him. That's his spirit leaves him. He returns to his earth. That's his body. And in that very day, his thoughts perish. His soul. His breath leaves him. His body goes to the earth, and in that day, his thoughts perish. Now that's scary, because if your thoughts perish, then, and your spirit goes to God, then how are you going to know anything to say, oh, thank you, Lord, how are you going to be with him this day in paradise if on the day that you die, your thoughts perish? Well, the suggestion is that at a spiritual level, you already know things that have not yet entered into your mind. You had to have had knowledge at a spiritual level if your physical thoughts perish and yet you are with God. All right? Okay, let me give you another one. 1 Thessalonians 5, verse 23, and the very God of peace sanctify you wholly, completely. I pray God your whole spirit and soul and body be preserved blameless unto the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ. So there it is, the three-part man. Spirit, soul, and body. Let's say it together. Spirit, soul, and body. First Thess. Okay, because I want you to keep these scriptures in your memory because we're going to go pretty deep tonight. How many of you can see just from those three passages that we exist in parts? We literally exist in parts. And what I want you to notice is that there is a part of you that was created, and there are parts of you that were formed. Oh, this is deep. Genesis 1, God created. But in Genesis 2, God formed. Do not confuse your creation with your formation. Do not confuse your creation with your formation. Because if you confuse the part of you that God created with the part of you that was formed, you're going to identify with a lower version of yourself. And when you identify with the lowest version of yourself, you cannot perform at the highest level. So, what do I mean, creation and form? How many are familiar with the passage in Jeremiah 1 where God says, Jeremiah, before I formed you in the belly, I knew you. And before you came out of the womb, I sanctified and ordained you a prophet to the nations. So that Jeremiah existed in God before his father met his mother. And the Jeremiah that God is speaking to is the Jeremiah that he knew before he was formed in the belly. Hence, God can give Jeremiah a monumental mission, which for Jeremiah is incompatible with his age, his education, his ability, and yet God is speaking to him like he was born for this. God is speaking to his higher self, to who he is in essence, not what he became in form. Can we go deeper? Are you sure? Careful what you wish for, because this is all the introduction, by the way. We're just getting started. Okay. So each part of you is a center of consciousness. Everyone say center of consciousness. Okay, what that means is that through the body, you are world conscious. And each of your consciousnesses connect you with a world. So through the body, you are world conscious and you can connect with the physical world. That's your five senses that allow you to connect to and relate with the physical world because your body is a center of consciousness. Okay, so I'm going to put this down here, world. Through the soul, you are self-conscious. And through the body, you are world conscious. That word says conscious, even the scriggle. Like I said in the beginning for the newcomers, if you can't read my writing, join the club. We have something in common. These are hieroglyphic symbols. Getting back to our roots here. Okay, so I'm world conscious through my body, but I'm self-conscious through the soul, through the mind, which is made up of two parts, the conscious and the subconscious. With my conscious mind, I think conscious thoughts. We are listening to each other and engaging with each other at a conscious level. But the subconscious mind is a thought storage system in which all your thoughts are carefully stored. When I say all your thoughts, I mean everything you've ever been taught, everything you've ever experienced, and any environment you've ever been exposed to It is all stored neatly at a subconscious level in your thought storage system. And what we call a memory is really the recall of a stored thought. And if you want an illustration of the power of your subconscious, here goes. Are you ready for this? What is your phone number? Or what did you have to do when I said phone number? You had to go in, because it wasn't in your consciousness till I said it. You had to go into the thought storage system and retrieve it. People say they have a bad memory. This is not true. You have poor methods of recalling stored information. You have forgotten nothing. You haven't forgotten the smell of your first school meal. You haven't forgotten anything. Every experience, it's stored, which is why you can't trust the soulish realm and the soulish part of a man. Why? Because it stored your education, it stored your experiences, it stored your environment, but your education may have been wrong. It's still stored. Your experiences may have been bad. It's still stored. The environment you were raised in may have been very toxic and totally dysfunctional and utterly abnormal, but it's still stored. And because it's all still there, you cannot get rid of it. It is there at a subconscious level. Sometimes unwillingly, things trigger or bring back something you would rather forget. That makes sense? That's the soulish realm. That's the arena of spiritual warfare. According to Paul, he says the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but they are mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds. Where are the strongholds? He said, casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God. So whatever is going on in your mind that's contradicting the knowledge of God, that is fundamentally a spiritual stronghold. And, you know, strongholds, they're not built overnight. They start with a suggestion. The suggestion, if entertained, becomes a scenario. And the scenario, if viewed long enough, becomes a stronghold. Now you have a belief in your mind that is contrary to the knowledge of God. And this is all happening in your soulish realm. That's the battle for the mind. And that's why, in fact, you know, salvation is not a one-time experience, you know? There's a process involved that transformation is the result of renewing your mind. Oh, I really want to talk about renewing the mind, and it's very, very important. I might do it tomorrow night. With the soul, you are self-conscious, but with the spirit, you are God-conscious. And it is your spiritual essence that connects you to the limitless, the boundless realm of God. Your body was formed by a biological process, and the state of your soul was formed by a sociological process. But your spirit was created by God. And it is at that level that you are godlike. It is that part of you that's God. See, when we tell people that they are godlike, they straight away start looking in the wrong mirror. See, you can hear that you're godlike all day. You can say people can tell you're the image and the likeness of God all day, but you're checking in with the wrong mirror. Can I give you the 3 mirrors you must not look in to find out who you are? The first mirror that can never tell you who you are is the physical mirror. Because all the physical mirror it says mirror, all right? Just forget it. That's what it says. The physical mirror can only reflect your physical body. And you are much more than your physical body. So you'll never figure out who you are looking in the physical mirror. You actually, you'll never know the part of you that is great by looking in the physical mirror. Because all the physical mirror can reflect to you is your body, which is only one part of you. And your body is the smallest part of you. It's the house in which spirit and soul are living. So if you see a house, it's just a house until you meet the occupants. Wrong mirror. You'll never figure out who you are by looking in that mirror. Are you ready for the next mirror? Circumstance. Okay? That's exactly what it says. If you look in the mirror of circumstance, what is your circumstance? That's exactly what it says, right? If you look in the mirror of circumstance, what is your circumstance? The circumstance is the circle in which you are standing. So you're going to look at your health. You're going to look at your wealth. You're going to look at all of these features of your life to figure out who you are. Wrong mirror. Because where you are in life doesn't tell anyone who you are in life. Oh, I need to say that again. Where you are right now doesn't tell me who you are. Blessed people go through bad places. And some of God's best have had seasons in prison. And if you were to look at Joseph in prison and try to figure out from his circumstance who he is, you would have made a mistake. Blessed people have been in lions' dens. Blessed people have been in fiery furnaces. Blessed people have wandered through wildernesses. Blessed people have even been hung on an old rugged cross between two thieves. But you can't look at the circumstance to determine who the person is. And you must never allow your circumstance to define you, only to refine you. My circumstances must refine me, but they must never define me. That was good. Do not confuse your identity with your address. My address is where I am. My identity is who I am. Wrong mirror. Third wrong mirror we look into, it's called other people's opinions. Okay? That's the wrong mirror. When God tells you that you're his image and his likeness, don't look for confirmation to the left or to the right. Because half of those people are miseducated, misinformed, and competing with you. They've embraced doctrines of scarcity and feel like if you're winning, they're losing. And they feel like they can get up by pulling you down. And so you get critics, you get haters, you get detractors. The minute you start trying to do something, it's their opinions. Now, I kind of could spend 2 hours on the opinion thing because I think it's important, but I'm not going to spend 2 hours on it. Your opinion of me is not the truth of me because your knowledge of me is limited. You don't know me, and I don't know you. So whatever opinion I have of you is probably wrong. So if you're going to know yourself, you don't look in those mirrors. There's one mirror you need to look into. That is the Word. The Word. And I'm going to put the Word right up here again. The Bible tells you who you really are. And the sooner you know who you really are, rejecting the body image information, rejecting the circumstantial information, rejecting the opinions of others' information, and embracing who you really are, you are now stepping into a new level of consciousness. And you are now able to think thoughts that other people do not think. So, God wants you to identify with the part of you that He made. And when I say identify with it, I mean to utilize the power of the two most powerful, creative, productive, industrious, entrepreneurial words in the whole English language. The two words are I am. Yeah, because I am now speaks to your identity. I am speaks to your essence. I am doesn't speak to circumstance, it speaks to the truth of you. I am. And incidentally, God identifies Himself as the I am that I am. And when Moses said, well, who shall I say sent me? God says, tell Pharaoh that I am has sent you to him. I am. Well, that's difficult because it seems like an incomplete statement. Seems like there should be something on the end of that. And I love it because it's open-ended. So I'm going to take the statement a little further. I am that. Let's pause there. I am that. Now, when you get a vision of your destiny as a creator of value, of solutions, of breakthroughs, of deliverance, and you stop and say, I am that. Now, what's happening is you're beginning to identify with the part of you that God made. And if there's something called fatherly pride, it happens when you hear your children identifying greatness within themselves. I am that. I am. Let's try it here tonight. Let's try it on the Zoom. I'm gonna call out some words, and I want to hear your response. Are you ready? Prosperous.
I am that. I am.
Unstoppable.
I am that. I am.
Courageous.
I am that. I am.
Victorious.
I am that. I am.
Abundant.
I am that. I am.
Enough.
I am that. I am.
Ooh. What happens now when you start tapping into your I am that? I am that. Not in ego, but in essence. You have to differentiate between who you are in person and who you are in principle. In principle, I am that. In essence, I am that. At a core level, I am that. Even though in person and in ego, there are things I am unlearning. There's a journey that I am on. There are struggles, issues, challenges I'm having to deal with. That's all where I am. It doesn't tell anyone who I am. Who I am is that. I'm a king in the kingdom of God because Jesus is not the king of slaves and servants. He is the king of other kings. He has a royal family, and I am that. And I was born to reign, to rule over a realm. It is my birthright to have dominion and to dominate a domain. It is my purpose. And you're now speaking not from your circumstance. You're speaking from your revelation of your who-ness. Now, the Hebrews took the name of God so seriously that when scribes wrote the ancient text, they would replace the sacred name of God, which is called the tetragrammaton, the name of 4 letters, which translates to I am that I am. They would replace it with Adonai, Lord. Which is why if you actually still have an actual physical Bible, you'll see the Lord in capital letters. That was put in out of respect for the sacred name of God. Because they were afraid of taking the Lord's name in vain. Because one of the commandments said, God will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain. In other words, there will be a negative consequence. There will be a repercussion to misusing the name of God. What was the name again? I am. Oh, so there will be a negative consequence to misusing the words I am. Like, if I'm going to be afraid of something, I should be afraid of attaching to the words I am anything that is incompatible with the nature of God. Because if I do that, I've taken his name in vain, and there will be a negative repercussion. So even if you are weak, let the weak say, oh, God help me. I am strong. Don't say that, because you're messing with God's name. Even if you are circumstantially poor, let the poor say, I am. This is now identifying with who I am in essence. How much time do I have left, by the way? Oh, really? Oh, really? All righty then. All right, is this making sense so far? I want everyone to make me feel at home that's in here right now, and those of you on Zoom to put your hands together and thank God for this word. Good. Good. All right. Okay, so I am convinced that there is a forgotten intelligence. It's the root intelligence, and it is the intelligence that informs all the other intelligences, enables the other intelligences, and facilitates the other intelligences, and it is your spiritual intelligence. And so, as much as I value the academic and the emotional and the relational, I am learning to listen. Well, I need to say it again. I'm learning to listen to the part of me that God made. Because the part of me that God made is afraid of nothing. Ooh, come on now. the part of me that God made doesn't know any limits and doesn't respect boundaries. Because that part of me was not only made by God, it was made from God. Oh, help. Because your breath into the nostrils is pouring out of yourself into the ceramic that was Adam. God was breathing out of himself. So there's a part of me that was made by God, from God, for God. We'll say it again. By God, from God, for God. At a biological level, children are made by their parents, from their parents. Does that make sense? And at the spiritual level, your spiritual essence, which is the real you, if you want to know who you really are, okay, you are a spirit. You have a soul. You live in a body. Most people that think they've met you haven't met the real you. The real you is the spiritual essence that has a soul and that lives in your body. And every now and again, you meet someone and you can feel the energy, the love, the radiance of their being. You ever been in that situation where you meet someone and your defenses are lowered straight away because you're actually feeling out of them something that you can only describe as spiritual? Meeting that part of you it's revolutionary to start with, okay? That's a revolution all by itself. Learning to listen to that part of you is transformational. All right, I'm going to go into this quite deep. Gideon is one of my favorite Old Testament characters. Gideon was hiding from the Midianites, his enemy. And an angel addressed him as follows: "The Lord is with you, you mighty man of valor." The angel is not lying to him. The angel is speaking to the part of him that God made. Not the part of him that reflects his sociology, but the part of him that God made. "The Lord is with you, you mighty man of valor." And Gideon argues, well, if the Lord is with us, why is all this happening? Where are all his miracles? God says, "You'll save Israel." Me? He says, "My father's house is the least in Manasseh," one of the tribes. But not just one of the tribes. Actually, not just one of the tribes. That's right. I have a gift like that, falling off as a gift. It's part of this is dramatized sermons, right? Not just one of the tribes. Some of you will know the story. Jacob has his sons. Joseph is the special son. Joseph goes to Egypt, and Joseph has two boys in Egypt. Manasseh is the oldest, and Ephraim is the youngest. But when Joseph asked his father Jacob to bless his two sons, he positioned them as the oldest at the right hand and the youngest at the left, so that Manasseh was to get the special blessing and Ephraim a lesser blessing. And Jacob, because of his experience, right, crossed his hands. And he gave the greater blessing to Ephraim and a lesser blessing to Manasseh. So when Gideon said, my father's house is the least in Manasseh, he was saying, actually, my father's house is the least in the lowest of all the tribes. We're at the bottom of the bottom. And then he concludes, and I am the least in my father's house. So this is not now the bottom of the pan. This is under the pan that is now baked. I am the bottom of the bottom. God says, go in this your might, you will deliver Israel. God is not lying to him. And God is not lying to you when he tells you about the size of the enterprise you are getting ready to build. Woo! He's not lying to you when he speaks greatness into you. When he speaks, when God speaks millions and billions into your mind, he's not lying to you. He is speaking to the part of you that he made, because that part of you is fearless, courageous, ambitious. Actually, it has what I call the God gene and divine DNA, which means that there's a part of you that is omnipotent to you, to your assignment. Not omnipotent in anything, but in the thing you were created for. You are the most powerful entity in your world. You're omnipotent in your field. You're omniscient. You know exactly what to do next at a spiritual level. Even if it hasn't yet entered your mind, you know it. So that when it's suggested to you, it resonates with you. And you are in some strange way omnipresent when it comes to your domain. God is not lying to you. And what I'm going to tell you to do right now is not asking you to lie. Is asking you to agree with the truth. Because there is a difference. Woo! Why am I enjoying this so much? There is a difference between the truth and the facts. The truth is always a fact, but the facts are not always true. Because facts are physical, but truth is spiritual. And because the truth is spiritual, it belongs to a higher realm. It is a higher court. And the truth can overrule a fact. That's what a miracle is. It is the temporary suspension of a natural law that has been overruled by a higher court. So it's a fact that if you throw human beings into a furnace, their skin is going to burn. But this was not true for 3 Hebrew boys. It's a fact that hungry lions will eat you if given the opportunity. But this was not true for Daniel. And therefore, there will come a point in your life when you have to decide whether you are going to agree with the facts or you're going to believe the truth. You think you're ready for this? Because this is going to happen repeatedly in your life. The facts are going to come up against the truth, and you're going to have to decide whether you're going to agree with the facts or stand with the truth. And it will happen at each new level of your elevation as an entrepreneur. the facts are going to challenge the truth. And you're going to have to say, let God be true and every man a liar. So, the story of Jacob and his blessing, his inheriting the birthright, it always posed problems for me because I study the Bible in a very particular way. I'm curious. I ask the pages questions. I ask the characters questions as if they were there. No, I'm not delusional. It's just a study method, right? And I wondered why it is that Jacob could obtain the birthright by deceit. And God back him up and say, from now on, I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That one there who dressed up in fur and lied to his blind father, pretending to be Esau, conspired with his mother Rebekah to obtain the birthright by deceit. And yet God says, Jacob have I loved. I got issues with Esau. I love Jacob. That's my boy. I'm struggling with that because it just didn't seem to fit. So I had to revisit the story. And here's what I found. I found that when Rebekah was pregnant with Esau and Jacob, God told her, 2 nations are in your womb, and the elder will serve the younger. So in her mind, the blessed one is the younger. When they were born, Esau came out first, but Jacob was attached to his heel. Right? Which in the tradition, unless there was a gap between the two, you couldn't actually determine who was firstborn. This was a bit of a cultural idiom that unless there was born, you couldn't clearly say. So in her mind, that second one, that's the one. So she builds a relationship with him in which she is convincing him, you are the one that God has chosen to inherit the birthright and the mantle of leadership for this family and the family of faith moving forward. You are the one. Now, society says, no, you're not the one. The facts say you are not the one. She says you are the one. So she's like the preacher telling someone who is sociologically disadvantaged that you are the one God has chosen to build something monumental in terms of a business, an enterprise, a value-add system. You are the one. So she goes further and says, I'm going to show you how to get it. You ready for this? She says, first of all, Jacob, you need to believe that you're the one. Believe it. I am the one. I am the one. I am the one God has chosen. She says, now you need to act like you are the one. What do you mean? Well, the one would go out, hunt, get and make soup and everything else. So you do that. You start acting like you are the one that God has chosen. Do what the one does. So she says, I'll help you. I'll make the soup. I'll make the soup. You're going to bring it into your father because that's what the one would do. You're going to act like you're the one. She said, but Jacob, it's not enough to act like you're the one. Go get some fur, put it on your arms because you need to feel like you are the one. Okay? So you need to start acting like you're the one, and then you need to feel like you are the one. Oh my gosh, how many ever got that $1 million feeling? I feel. See, you know when you're about to break through because you start feeling it. You start feeling it. I can feel you. You can feel it. You start to feel like you're the one. He says, and listen, your father's going to draw you near, so you need to smell like you are the one. Oh my gosh, you need to believe you're the one, act like it, feel like it, and smell like it. What are you doing now? You're siding with the truth against the facts. He says, go into your father, Isaac. He is blind. So he's going to feel you. He's going to smell you. He's blind. You know what Isaac represents? Isaac represents principles because principles are blind to personalities. A principle is not looking at your personality. It's blind to person. It's looking for something else. Go before Isaac. He presents it. Isaac feels it. Oh, you feel like Esau. Come in. You smell like Esau. Tell me, are you Esau? Now here's what Jacob heard. Jacob heard, are you the one that is worthy of the birthright? Are you the one that is worthy of the blessing? Are you the one that God chose to inherit this role? Are you the one? And Jacob said, he didn't say, I am Esau. He said, I am. I am. And Isaac released the blessing to him, and God stood by it. Because actually, the facts were against Jacob, but the truth was on his side. And every now and again, you have to act like, feel like, smell like, and behave like you are the one God has chosen for what is next. And when you're asked, are you the one? You have to say, I am. Because that's coming out of your spiritual essence. Is this making sense? Yes. Is this good so far? Because once you accept that there's a part of you that is godlike, that is fearless, that is bold, that is courageous, that is supremely creative, innovative, smart, wise. Every now and again we tap into it. We're like, oh, that was so smart. I'm so glad I did that. But it's almost accidental that we tap into this greater part of ourselves. And every now and again we're in a seminar and we're reminded of who we are. Well, it's beyond locating your spiritual essence. It's now learning to listen. Learning to listen. So I feel like I've got probably like 20 minutes, right? So I'm going to go crazy in 20 minutes, okay? I'm just going to say crazy stuff because I feel the liberty to say crazy stuff in this environment. Because this, you know what? The world has seen what cities look like when wicked people have all the money. But they are yet to see what a city will look like when godly people, come on now, who are kings of their thing, are using their gifts for the service and upliftment of humanity. They are yet to see what wealthy believers really look like. And we are the generation that God has chosen for that. Woo! Someone say yes, we are that generation. So I'm going to share with you something that I personally did, and I needed to do it because I needed to locate the best version of me. And I needed to learn how to listen to the best part of me. The part of me that God made, and the part of me that is smart. The part of me that's just unique, unstoppable. I had to find that person. Dr. Myron, I've got a feeling you're going to love this piece, right? I went on a 40-day fast. Now, I know what's happening. You're looking at me. You're saying, no, you didn't, Bishop. You're looking at me. You're saying, yeah, he's really speaking out of his spiritual essence right now. Woo! And you're right. It wasn't a food fast. It wasn't a food fast. I went on a 40-day media fast. No news. You know why? Because the news is not only a weapon of mass instruction, it is a form of slave indoctrination. Why? Because what is promoted fundamentally is lack and shortage, limits as to how far you can go, and uncertainty about your future. And if you absorb a daily diet of lack, limitation, and uncertainty, you cannot even listen to the part of you that God made. Because at a soulish level, you're battling the sense of lack. You start believing there's shortage in the world. You start believing there's limits as to how far you can go. And you start believing that whatever you do, it might not work out because the future is uncertain. I said, cut out all the media. Is this making sense to anyone? And by the way, if you do this, you will probably never go back. You will simply, on a need-to-know basis, but as a general rule, it will be so liberating. You will realize that actually there's a part of you that doesn't believe in lack, that doesn't believe in limitation, and that doesn't see the future as uncertain. And that's the part of you you're going to learn to listen to. Because you simply cannot take action in the direction of your destiny while you are being indoctrinated as a slave. Not only was I not allowed to consume any media, I was not allowed to engage any negative conversation. Okay? So you're going to fast negative people. Okay. That's it. I want to thank you very much. I've got to go. Time. We'll catch up. When it came to social media, only what was necessary to do my business. And some things that I subscribe to that feed some positives. So the reality was, not only did I have to fast those things, I had to intentionally consume inspirational, motivational, and educational content daily. Books, videos, audios, training. Let me tell you what happens to you if for 40 days you cut out the negativity and become intentional about feeding your faith. You're going to tap into a side of you that is gigantic. You're going to tap into the limitless. You're going to tap into the boundless. And you're going to begin to think things that you wouldn't otherwise have thought, and you will find solutions and innovations that you otherwise never would. You'll find the courage of your convictions to follow through on a course of action. Even if it's unpopular, you're going to do it because your mind is being renewed. Does this make sense? All right, you guys are totally fantastic. I think if I start on the next thing, we don't leave here tonight at all. We have to come back tomorrow night because I want to give you a biblical business blueprint on tomorrow night and take it to another level. Have you enjoyed it tonight? All right. I mentioned this, but it's not really available tonight, right? But it might be tomorrow. What do you think? It might even be available tonight. Who knows? What do you think? So there's the book, Spiritual Intelligence for Entrepreneurs. There is the course, which is Spiritual Intelligence at Work, but this comes with a ton of videos of me teaching this in detail. And not only was I not allowed to consume any media, I was not allowed to engage any negative conversation. Okay? So you're going to fast negative people. Okay. That's it. I want to thank you very much. I've got to go. Time. We'll catch up. When it came to social media, only what was necessary to do my business. And some things that I subscribe to that feed some positives. So the reality was, not only did I have to fast those things, I had to intentionally consume inspirational, motivational, and educational content daily. Books, videos, audios, training. Let me tell you what happens to you if for 40 days you cut out the negativity and become intentional about feeding your faith. You're going to tap into a side of you that is gigantic. You're going to tap into the limitless. You're going to tap into the boundless. And you're going to begin to think things that you wouldn't otherwise have thought, and you will find solutions and innovations that you otherwise never would. You'll find the courage of your convictions to follow through on a course of action. Even if it's unpopular, you're going to do it because your mind is being renewed. Does this make sense? All right, you guys are totally fantastic. I think if I start on the next thing, we don't leave here tonight at all. We have to come back tomorrow night because I want to give you a biblical business blueprint on tomorrow night and take it to another level. Have you enjoyed it tonight? There are three things really that is the objective of this body of work. It is to locate, it is to listen to, and to leverage the part of you that God made. If you can locate it, listen to it, and leverage it, I think one of the biggest contracts in my business life occurred as the result of getting in a lift with a gentleman. An elevator is what I'm talking about. I saw the blank. My translator, he gets it. An elevator. and simply knowing this was a divine appointment, not an accident. And simply initiating a conversation translated to a world, an entire world of opportunity, possibility, productivity, increase, influence, and income. Huge. But it was the sense that I knew I have to talk to this person. And what's happening there is I'm learning to listen to that part of me that God made. So I'm not hiding in the corner anymore, waiting for someone to come up and say hi. I'm walking into a room realizing that if I'm in this room, something's in this room for me. And I'm here for someone, someone's here for me. Let's just meet and greet until it happens. So that's the objective of it all. Dr. Myron Golden, it's been a pleasure. Bless you all. I'll see you tomorrow night. We'll do some more. God bless.